أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I welcome you to our third year of Usul al-Kafi, which is the greatest work of hadith that we have in our school of thought. The one who compiled this monumental work was al-Kulayni, Thiqatul Islam al-Kulayni, who spent 20 years of his life in those difficult times, in the al-Ghaybat al-Sughra, the minor occultation, going from one village to another village, examining hundreds and hundreds of manuscripts in order to compile this book. It has over 16,000 hadiths. What's unique about al-Kafi is that before this book was compiled, you had tens of thousands of narrations from the Ahlul Bayt scattered in manuscripts. 400 of these manuscripts were unique, they had a special status, they were widely accepted by scholars. Al-Usul al-Arba'mi'ah, the 400 principal works. So for example, Hurayz, one of the companions of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he had his book. It's called Kitab al-Salah. The hadiths that he had heard about Salah, he had gathered it in that book and he compiled it. This existed at the time of Kulayni, this book. Some companions, they did not organize their manuscripts into organized chapters. Someone would sit for an hour, listen to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Everything he would hear from the Imam, he would write it, he would document it. Now the Imam can talk about 20 subjects in one session, right? So you had all these narrations scattered in hundreds of manuscripts. If you wanted to read a particular chapter, it was very tedious. You had to go and collect all these manuscripts, flip through them, to read all the hadiths about, for instance, Salah, about Hajj, about the Islamic belief system. What did al-Kulayni do? He gathered all these manuscripts, organized them into chapters, and he produced a work called al-Kafi. So this was really a breakthrough at that time. Now you did not need to go to all these manuscripts. If you have the book of Kafi, you can just see all these chapters organized, and you read the hadiths of the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them. So 2 years ago, we started our discussion of the book of Kafi. In the first year, we discussed the first volume of our book, Kitab al-Aqli wal-Jahl, the book of the intellect and foolishness. Last year, we examined the second volume, which is Kitab al-Ilm, the book of knowledge. And we're at page 323, almost the end of this book. We're going to have another book, a third book this year, inshallah. Next week we will bring books in class to give to you. We have some books here as well. So let us know if you require the book, and we will give it to you, inshallah. For those who attended this class last year, we're still using the same book. In about a month or two, we're going to have the third volume, inshallah. In our discussion tonight, we will examine Hadith 2.18.1, page 323 of our book, and that's chapter 18. This hadith is from Abu Basir. Abu Basir is one of the companions of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. عن أبي عبد الله عليه السلام قال قلت له اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله. I asked Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam about this verse in the Holy Quran. Surah 9, verse 31. They took their ahbar, their rabbis, and also their ruhban, their monks, as idols, as objects of worship beside Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum. What is this verse talking about? He's asking the Imam for the tafsir of this verse. Now this chapter, chapter 18, it's on blind following. That's the title that al-Kulayni gives to this chapter. One word for blind following at the time of the Prophet and the Imams was taqlid. Initially, taqlid, when you follow someone blindly, had a negative meaning to it. It means without any evidence, without any proof, you follow someone. As the Quran says, the Prophet would tell them, why do you worship these idols? Our forefathers would worship them, so we just follow them. This is negative taqlid that the Quran condemned. Now we have a different type of taqlid, where you follow a scholar. That's different. This is something we examine in our Islamic beliefs course. In fact, tomorrow night, inshallah, we will examine taqlid and the basis for taqlid. So this chapter is dedicated to blind following. So he asked the Imam ﷺ about this verse. How does Allah say in the Quran that the Christians and the Jews worship the rabbis and the monks? Have you heard of Jews and Christians worshiping the rabbis and monks? Yes, Christians, many of them worship Jesus ﷺ. At one point, the Jews would worship Uzair and they claimed he was the son of God. But nobody worships a rabbi. No one worships a monk. So what's going on here? The Imam ﷺ states, Ama wallah, I swear by God, let it be known. Ma da'awhum ila ibadati anfusihim. The rabbis never asked their people to worship them. The monks never asked Christians to worship them. وَلَوْ دَعَوْهُمْ مَا أَجَابُهُمْ. Had they asked their people to worship them, their followers would not have honored this request, because they know better than to worship their scholars. So that's not what the verse is talking about. وَلَكِنْ أَحَلُّوا لَهُمْ حَرَامًا وَحَرَّمُوا عَلَيْهِمْ حَلَالًا. What did these monks and rabbis do? That which God had made permissible, they declared haram. That which was haram, they declared halal. They played around with the teachings of God, and their people blindly followed. That's how they worship them. The Imam is explaining this verse, and how is it that the followers of Christianity and Judaism worship their monks and their rabbis? Let's stop at this hadith and discuss this hadith. First of all, what's the meaning of ahbar? Ahbar, learned person, but specifically it refers to Jewish scholars. Now, why are they called ahbar? The word ahbar comes from which word in Arabic? Hibr. And hibr means what? Ink. Ahbar are like the people of the ink, because the Jewish scholars were known to write, whether it was the Talmud, the commentary on the Torah. They were known for writing extensively. So historically they became known as the ahbar. So the ahbar are the Jewish scholars, and the ruhban is plural. The singular word is rahib, which means a Christian monk. So we're talking about the Jewish and Christian scholars. The Imam alayhi salam is defining for us types of worship. We have two types of polytheism. One, you declare someone as God or equal with God, and you literally worship that person. Clearly that's polytheism. Raising Jesus alayhi salam to the status of being divine and worshiping him and recognizing him as the Lord. Obviously that's a type of shirk. That's a type of polytheism, no doubt about that. This is not what these people did with these scholars. They engaged in a second type of shirk. What is the second type? Which polytheism were they guilty of? Because the Quran is clearly stating that they took their scholars as the object of worship besides Allah, meaning they worshiped them. Well, how did they worship them? By blindly following them. Whatever their rabbi said, they accepted blindly. Whatever their monk said, they accepted blindly. In other words, they started worshiping them because they took a different path. They did not stay true to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran condemns this. Now there is an important point here. You could say the layman, the people, they don't know any better. They follow their scholars. Their scholars tell them this is halal, this is haram, and they accept. Why is the Quran condemning them? How could they know, these laymen? What's the answer to that? What is it that they did wrong? Yes, the rabbis and the monks, they're guilty for changing God's religion and playing with rules. Wine was haram, they made it halal, for instance. The sin is on them. The burden is on them. But the people who came and they followed them, why does the Quran condemn them? Yes.
I'm remembering a verse in Surah Al-Baqarah where Allah criticizes them as amani. They have no idea what the book says, what the law says of themselves, and they just go off of what they hear. So maybe he's criticizing that they have no knowledge, even base knowledge themselves, to check.
So that's part of the reason why the Quran condemns them. Yes, you are to follow a scholar who's an expert, but never follow blindly. Know why you're following. Know the basis for your taqlid. And you have to be courageous enough, if you find something troubling, challenge. Ask for evidence. Ask for proof. Don't just blindly accept. Ask for proof. You need to know exactly who you're following, why you're following them, and what is it that makes following them valid. You need to know all of that. You cannot say, well, I'm a layperson, I don't know any better. I just followed a scholar. Now, if they were playing with God's religion, that's not on me. Well, the Quran tells you, go and investigate. Make sure that that person is trustworthy. Number two, what is the system that they're using? Is it a valid system or no? Challenge them. Have experts go and ask them. And that's why in our school of thought, historically the door was always open to challenging the scholars. Any marja, any scholar in the seminary, if they are asked, what is your evidence? They will tell you what their evidence is. In fact, they publish their evidence and they give it to the public. Of course, you have to be an expert to understand, what they're stating there. It gets technical sometimes. But any time that they're challenged, they have the answer for you. Whereas with these monks and with the rabbis, that wasn't the case. They declared something halal, the people say, okay, khalas, it's halal. The scholars have considered it halal. Go and ask for proof. On what basis did they say this is halal? When the Torah clearly, the original Torah clearly condemned something, why did they change that? In all of God's religion, wine was haram. They made it halal. But their people, they did not challenge them. And so they were guilty of worshiping them. Whenever you follow someone, follow with evidence. Follow with proof. Know why you're following them. So we find that this is an interesting verse in the Holy Quran that condemns them for worshipping their scholars. There's a hadith, the author mentions this on page 324 in the commentary. He says, Adi ibn Hatim, who had converted from Christianity to Islam, he came to the Prophet ﷺ and he was wearing a cross made from gold on his neck. He was wearing this and he came to the Prophet. The Prophet ﷺ told him, what is this symbol? Why are you idolizing Jesus and taking him as an idol? And this is the symbol that represents this idol. Why? Why do you do this? So he kind of thought about it and then he removed the cross. And then the Prophet ﷺ read this verse. He said they took their rabbis and their monks as lords beside God. Because they told them to do this, they accepted. Without challenging their rabbis, without challenging their monks, without Christians telling their monks, well, how do you expect us to worship Jesus? This is clearly shirk. They never challenged them. So the Prophet ﷺ is telling Adi ibn Hatim, people who are on that path, they're guilty of worshiping their monks. And this is something that's unacceptable. Yes, brother.
Generally speaking, Sayyidina, even in our communities, as far as Muslims go, sometimes there is this fine line between akhlaq and then challenging somebody. And a lot of people may be under the pressure of, okay, if I say anything or challenge somebody, then I may look as the one person in the crowd asking a question, even though it could be with the appropriate and proper akhlaq. So you see a lot of people falling victim to it. And even the person, the average layman, who doesn't know much about it, they would know this much. If they don't know about it, that something doesn't sound right, how can they go challenge? Because this scholar, who definitely knows more than this individual, can say something else and then you would be put on the spot. So you see a lot of that going on, especially amongst youth or even amongst adults in many different countries from that standpoint. So how do you balance that out? Somebody needs to know akhlaq first and then go upon challenge?
That's a very good point. When we say challenge, we're not saying go and challenge everywhere in any way and be disrespectful to certain gatherings. No, there's a certain procedure by which you challenge. When we say challenge, go and investigate and know why you're following this path. That's what it means. Not, let's say you have a majlis, there's 300 people, you get up and say, what is this taqlid? What am I doing? That's not the proper venue for it. I'll give some practical examples. Let's say you have doubts about taqlid. Is taqlid even valid? Why do we even follow scholars? Start by going to a local scholar in your community. Those people who sometimes, have this habit of spreading these ideas in society and creating doubts in the minds of people, have they actually sat with a local scholar and asked them what is the basis for taqlid? Why do we do taqlid? Show me the hadiths, show me the verses from the Quran. Have they actually taken that step? Or oftentimes not really. That's one step. Someone learned in your community, go and ask them privately. Tell them I have doubts about this issue. If the doubt gets resolved, which 95% of the times it does get resolved, it gets resolved. If it doesn't, maybe you need to speak to someone who's more learned. So when we say challenge, that means go and ask. Ask someone who's learned, what is the basis for this? We don't mean go out in public and start shouting for and demanding for answers. That's not the meaning of challenging. Challenging means just go ask. Know why you do taqlid. If your parents are educated, ask them. If they have the answer, they'll tell you the answer. If they don't, see a local scholar. See someone who knows, a wise community member, and they could walk you through it as an example. But when we find, in the history of these other religions, they did not do that. They just accepted what the rabbis told them. In fact, in Islam this happened. Right after the Prophet ﷺ. Right after the Prophet, in another hadith, we'll examine the innovations that happened. No one would challenge these companions for introducing these innovations. For example, one of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ was Hajj al-Tamattu', the mut'ah between the two Hajj, basically the Umrah and the Hajj. For those who live outside of Mecca, you do Umrah al-Tamattu'. And that means when you do the a'mal of the Umrah, you free yourself from the Ihram and everything becomes lawful. Everything becomes lawful. Umar ibn al-Khattab had a problem with that. He said, this type of mut'ah, I ban. Those who come for the Umrah, they consider themselves basically, in a state of sanctity. So if a husband is with his wife, he cannot have any contact with her until he finishes the Hajj. Now this goes against the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So he made an innovation, people just followed. No one challenged. No one said, where are you bringing this from? They blindly followed until today. Salat al-Tarawih, blind following. The Prophet ﷺ refused to do any mustahab salah in jama'ah. At the time of the second caliph, he saw people praying in the mosque. Then the nawafil of the nights of the month of Ramadan. He said, why is everyone praying individually? Let's gather together and pray jama'ah. And that's how it happened. No one challenged. This is not the sunnah of the Prophet. This is unacceptable. On what basis are you saying that? See, it requires people who are devoted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ask and see what is the basis of this. Who gave you that authority to do that? So in this hadith, the Imam alayhi salam takes this verse and he explains it to us. That there are types of polytheism and shirk. Following someone blindly, without a basis, without evidence, is a type of shirk. Because you're taking their laws and you're putting them above the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any questions on this hadith? Let's now go to the second hadith in this chapter. Page 327. This hadith is narrated by Muhammad ibn Ubaydah. He said, قال لي أبو الحسن. Abu al-Hasan alayhi salam is a title shared by a number of imams. In this hadith, it's referring to al-Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam. One of his titles, one of his kunya was Abu al-Hasan. Ya Muhammad, أنتم أشد تقليدا أم المرجئة? Muhammad ibn Ubaydah was a Shia. Al-Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam asked him, are you better followers or the Murji'ah? The Murji'ah basically were those who opposed the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them. Those who did not really consider the authority of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam to be the authority right after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They postponed Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam from his divinely given position. So the Imam alayhi salam is saying, you the Shia, are you better followers or our enemies, the other schools of thought? They're better followers. Al-Imam Rida is asking him this question. What did he reply? قال قلت قلدنا وقلدوا. We both follow. We're followers, we do taqlid, they do taqlid. In other words, he was saying, we follow you, the Ahlul Bayt, and they follow others. The Imam alayhi salam says, لم أسألك عن هذا. Answer precisely. I did not ask you that. I did not tell you that you both follow. I specifically asked you, who's a better follower? So after he asked him that, he's like, I didn't have an answer. I didn't know what to tell him. فقال أبو الحسن عليه السلام إن المرجئة نصبت رجلا لم تفرض طاعته وقلدوه. It seems the Imam alayhi salam in this hadith and in other similar hadiths, he's really explaining or highlighting the injustice that was done to Ahlul Bayt and how they were betrayed. He says the other schools of thought, they followed figures whom they did not believe you really had to follow, but they followed them well. As for you, the Shia, you believe that God appointed us the Imams of Ahlul Bayt and that you have to follow us, but you didn't follow us. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam has a similar statement in criticizing his companions. He says, I am on the haqq, and you know that I am on the haqq, but you don't obey me. Muawiyah is on falsehood. Muawiyah is on batil. Yet his people follow him and they obey him. The Imam alayhi salam says, I wish I could switch 10 of you with one of the supporters of Muawiyah. And he gives the example of dirham and dinar. 1 dinar is about 10 dirhams. So you give 10 dirhams and you get 1 dinar. If you wanted to go to a money exchange place, let's say at the time, a money exchanger, you give him 10 silver coins and return how many golden coins would you get normally? About 1 golden coin. The Imam alayhi salam says, I wish I could do this. I would give up 10 of my followers and get 1 of the followers of Muawiyah. But what does he mean by that? He means that the followers of the enemies of Ahlul Bayt were so committed to their leaders. If Muawiyah says go to war, they go without challenging him. Jump off the cliff, they do it without challenging him. But Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, every little thing he was challenged. No, they gave him a headache, they created problems for him. The Imam alayhi salam says, I don't have loyal companions. But Muawiyah has loyal companions. In other words, Imam Rida alayhi salam here is telling the Shia that you, the Shia, even though you recognize us as divine leaders, you don't obey us. But other schools of thought, they don't consider their authorities to be divine leaders. Ask any Sunni right now, did God appoint Abu Bakr to be the leader? He's not going to say yes. He says, no, the Ummah chose him. That's the most they'll say. Does any Sunni say that God directly appointed Abu Bakr to be the caliph? No Sunni says that. No Sunni scholar has ever said that in history. Did God directly appoint Umar ibn al-Khattab to be the leader? No. Okay, now I ask you, did Allah appoint Ali ibn Abi Talib to be the leader? All of you will say yes. Who's committed to their school of thought more? Other schools of thought or the Shia school of thought? And Imam Rida alayhi salam here, it's not that he's venting, But he's highlighting how the Ahlul Bayt are so betrayed. Their followers know that God appointed them, yet they don't really follow them. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But you look at other schools of thought, they're so committed. If their leader says something, they're very committed. The followers of Abu Hanifa, they did a very good job in emulating his school of thought and implementing his school of thought. The followers of Shafi'i, they did a very good job in accepting his fatwas and implementing them. But when you come to the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, you see a different scenario.
So you,
Yes.
is it because before, during their time, there were people that were bought, they were sold, or they had fear? So they had to follow Yazid and Muawiyah?
The element of fear is an element that we find in the history of Shia persecution, no doubt. But remember that with these other figures, sometimes the element of fear was there. Abu Hanifa, for instance, he was at odds with the government of his time, with the Abbasids. In fact, he was imprisoned. Following Abu Hanifa did not always mean, and in those times, that you had the luxury to follow him and you would not be persecuted. You could be persecuted. But yet his followers show so much devotion. And they're willing to sacrifice. They're willing to be persecuted. It has always been the case in history. When these leaders of the schools of thought, they established those schools of thought, their followers were so committed, they were so devoted. Even though there was persecution, there was fear, they didn't care. I mean, imagine, my dear brothers and sisters, imagine Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam at Karbala. How many people got killed on that day? How many people got killed?
From his side? So
No, from all sides, from the other side. Give me a conservative estimate.
2,000.
2,000? Hundreds? Can we say hundreds? We can say hundreds. Because the companions of the Imam and the family members of the Imam, it was very common for them to kill 40, 50, sometimes even 100. They were really courageous and warriors. Let's say 2,000. Those followers of Yazid and Ibn Ziyad, they went to the battlefield knowing there is a high chance they would get killed. Yet they went. Yet thousands of them showed up, knowing that thousands are going to get killed that day. You think they had doubts? They knew somebody's going to get killed, yet they made that sacrifice. But when it comes to Imam al-Hussein, only 70 made that sacrifice. Only 100 made that sacrifice. See the equation here? Those who went to Karbala, why did they go? There was a high likelihood they could get killed. You know, at Siffin, last year we examined the Nahj al-Balagha, the casualties, the death toll at Siffin. Tens of thousands of Muawiyah's supporters got killed at Siffin. Tens of thousands. Some say 40,000, some say 50,000, some say 70,000. The followers of Muawiyah knew very well that if they go to this war, tens of thousands of them would be killed, yet they went. The fear didn't stop them. The chances of being killed didn't stop them, yet they went. But Imam Ali alayhi salam, his followers sometimes abandoned him. You see the problem here? See, if it was the case that the enemies of Ahlul Bayt, their followers were always safe, it was a safe path, there was no harm, no persecution, no killing, no fear, you could say, okay, I understand why the Ahlul Bayt would be abandoned. Because sticking with the Ahlul Bayt means you will get persecuted and killed. But if you go with their enemies, you were safe. That wasn't the case. The followers of the enemies of the Ahlul Bayt oftentimes would get killed, yet they would make that sacrifice. Why? Why? And Imam Rida alayhi salam is telling him, look at this miserable state.
Sayyidina, weren't, as far as the enemies are concerned, didn't they broadcast and say that every individual in that area should be standing up against Imam Hussein and join the army, otherwise they will face repercussions? So it was an element.
They did instigate that culture of fear. No doubt about that. Not going to Karbala may have meant that you might be questioned, interrogated, maybe fined, right? Not killed. Now that was unusual. You know, if you just didn't do anything, it was very unlikely that they would just kill you in broad daylight. Those who stayed back in Kufa, they weren't killed. Yes, they lost status. Maybe the monthly salary from public funds was disconnected from them. They lost perks.
So fear was instigated.
So fear was instigated. Now look at the irony. That fear of staying back in Kufa and not getting the perks, that fear caused them to go to Karbala, knowing that at Karbala they could get killed. Why did they go? At least when you stay back in Kufa, okay, you might be interrogated, maybe a few days they'll imprison you. But going to Karbala, that means 2,000 people are going to get killed. 2,000 out of 30,000, that's a big percentage. What's the percentage, 2,000 out of 30,000, assuming there were 30,000 there? That's 1 out of 15, right? That's a little bit less than 10%. A lot less? 7%? If you go to a place and there's a 7% chance you get killed, that's serious. 7%, that's serious, right? Yet 30,000 went. 30,000 showed up. Siffin. At Siffin, there was a 60% chance of being killed. 60% chance of being killed at Siffin. Why did the followers of Muawiyah go to Siffin? Why? Knowing that 60% you're probably going to get killed. They still went. Why? See how they're committed to their leaders? Even though their leaders are on the wrong path, but they show commitment. The Imams of Ahlul Bayt never had commitment like that from the general people.
But from their side, they don't believe that their leaders on the wrong path. They believe that they're on the right path.
Of course, they believed that Muawiyah was on the right path, but did they believe God appointed Muawiyah? No. He's a leader. He's appointed as the governor of Sham. Let's just take it. But they don't believe that he was appointed directly by God. Whereas the followers of Imam Ali recognized that the Prophet ﷺ directly appointed him. See, even there's a difference. Even there's a difference. Yet, you find less commitment from the followers of Ahlul Bayt. It's tragic. It's really tragic. And Imam Rida in this hadith, he's highlighting that. Let's look at the world today, my dear brothers and sisters. I know this makes us uncomfortable to think about. But look at the world today. Who emphasized Salah and Quran after the Prophet more than the Ahlul Bayt? Who? No. Right after the Prophet. Who emphasized Quran and Salah after the Prophet more than the Ahlul Bayt themselves? No one. Every Imam of Ahlul Bayt, at the moment of their Shahada, لا تنال شفاعتنا مستخفا بصلاته. Our shafa'ah will not include the one who's negligent with his prayers. Al-Quran, Al-Quran, Al-Quran. Is there someone more in history who said, read the Quran, memorize the Quran, practice the Quran, be mindful of your prayers, be honest, be this, more than the Ahlul Bayt? Okay, historically look at their followers. Today in the world, are the followers of the Ahlul Bayt known for being committed to Salah and Quran? Or maybe some other schools of thought are known for that. Why? Why is this the case? Think about it. Yes, we do have a discussion whether being on the wrong path, does your salah have that much value? That's another discussion. But the actual commitment, being committed, at least from the outside, the followers of Ahlul Bayt always gave them a hard time. And this is tragic. And in this hadith, the Imam ﷺ states, فَهُمْ أَشَدُّ مِنْكُمْ تَقْلِيدًا. They are better followers than you. These are the words of Imam Rida ﷺ. The Imam says the enemies of Ahlul Bayt, they were better followers than you, the Shia. Of course, not all the Shia, but many who claim to be Shia.
But what's the reason behind it?
What's the reason behind it?
You know, it puzzles me too. I always start thinking about it. Because Ahl Sunnah, they're really, truly, I don't want to say better than the Shia, but from what I've seen before I got into too much into religion, that that's bestowed on them since they were kids. I mean, that's something they don't play with.
The parenting and the culture is
Yeah,
important, of
the-
course.
The prayer times, the Quran, everything, it's like, it's bestowed on them since they were kids. Where, I don't wanna say majority of us, but, you know, we didn't take it as serious as they did.
I
And
think
it's sad.
I think historically speaking, I mean, fear again plays a big role. I mean, historically speaking, Shias were always persecuted. So the parents, would they even have the audacity to tell themselves and their children to let's head out to the mosque and pray openly as a Shia?
But now.
That is a factor, definitely.
I think because you're on the right path, the shaitan will play a bigger role on you.
That's true. That's true, definitely. When you're on the right path. No, we have hadiths about this, by the way. It's true. It's true. That's very true.
You're always fighting yourself.
When you're on the right path and you offer a deed, it has a lot more value. So obviously the shaitan is going to intensify his efforts with you. There's no doubt about that. There are factors to it, but that's the reality. The level of commitment is something we find the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, you know, constantly highlighting. Let's now examine tradition 2.19.1 on page 332. This hadith is from Muhammad ibn Muslim, one of the top companions of Imam al-Baqer and Imam al-Sadiq alayhim as-salam, and Abi Ja'far alayhi as-salam. Abu Ja'far is Imam al-Baqer. He says, خطب أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib gave this sermon. Now, this sermon is sermon 50 in Nahj al-Balagha with slightly different, wording. But it's basically sermon number 50 in Nahj al-Balagha. This is a speech that Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam delivered after Siffin and the whole event of the arbitration, the tahkim. The Imam alayhi salam said in his speech, أيها الناس إنما بدء وقوع الفتن أهواء تتبع وأحكام تبتدع. You know how the fitna starts? Chaos, controversy, a wave of doubts that causes people to lose faith in their religion. It all starts with ahwa'un tuttaba, desires being followed. When there are people in society, their main goal is to follow and fulfill their desires, you have fitna. Wa ahkamun tubtada, and laws being innovated. When people innovate laws, invent laws, that's where you have chaos. يُخَالَفُ فِيهَا كِتَابُ اللَّهِ. The book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is violated. يَتَوَلَّى فِيهَا رِجَالٌ رِجَالًا. And then you find that people give authority to people who should not get authority. Unauthorized people get the authority. That's what happens. Then the Imam mentioned something beautiful. Why is it that people fall for these traps? Why is it that people are affected by these doubts? The Imam ﷺ states, فَلَوْ أَنَّ الْبَاطِلَ خَلَصَ لَمْ يَخْفِ عَلَى ذِي حِجَةٍ وَلَوْ أَنَّ الْحَقَّ خَلَصَ لَمْ يَكُنْ اختلاف ولكن يؤخذ من هذا ضغث ومن هذا ضغث فيمزجان. The Imam ﷺ says, you know how these people who create doubt, you know how do they get away with it? He says they take some falsehood and they mix it with the truth. And that's why people get confused. If they give you the falsehood as it is, anybody who has some rational understanding, anybody who's sane would detect it. You could easily detect the fraud. And if the truth was presented as it is, no one would argue, there would be no controversy. When does the controversy arise? When you have falsehood being mixed with the truth. That's what generates doubts. And there are people historically who always fulfilled this role. They would come up with doubts, misconceptions, objections. They take the truth, they add an element of falsehood in it, they spread it. The one who's not well educated, who's not well grounded in their faith, they're impacted by it. And that's how they spread the shubuhat. They spread the doubts. Yes, brother. Did you have a question?
No.
So the Imam alayhi salam in this hadith states, فَهُنَالِكَ اسْتَحْوَذَ الشَّيْطَانُ عَلَىٰ أَوْلِيَائِهِ. In these moments, the shaitan comes to his friends, to his party, and he overwhelms them. وَنَجَى الَّذِينَ سَبَقَتْ لَهُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ الْحُسْنَى. As for those who are fixed on the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, due to their good intentions, always really wanting to know the truth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will have saved them. In Arabic, an innovation is called the bid'ah. The Imam alayhi salam here mentions bid'ah. Bid'ah is inserting something in religion that did not exist at the legal level, at the hukum level, not the application. Let's make a distinction here. Sometimes the ruling, the legal ruling is there, but we have multiple applications for it. For instance, Islam says respect your parents. That's the law, that's the ruling. No one can change that. How do you respect your parents? Is there a fixed way of respecting parents? Is there? No. It varies from one society to another society. If you live in the Middle East like Iran or Iraq, your parents walk in, you stand up for them. That's very common. In some other cultures, you kiss their hand. In some other culture, you may show them a different gesture. In some Asian cultures, let's say. So the ruling is respect parents. But how do you respect them? The application can vary from one time to another time, from one era to another era, from one generation to another generation. That's not a bid'ah. Here in America, how do people respect parents? Do we have an American way of respecting someone?
Kiss them.
Kiss them. On their birthday, get flowers for your mother or father, right? Maybe that's a way of respecting them. Okay, if you live in a society that finds this a type of respect, do it. It's mustahab. Someone could say, what do you mean? This is bid'ah. Where did Islam say take a flower for your mom? Do we have a hadith about that? You don't need a hadith about that. Because the hadith says respect your mother. If in your society, respecting her means buying a cake for her, buying flowers for her, buying a gift for her, that becomes mustahab. Because you're taking the law, you're applying it. This is not an innovation. Some shallow-minded Muslims, like the ones that you find in some holy areas, in Mecca and Medina, they're so rigid, they declare these types of things as bid'ah, innovation. I myself, I went to the Baqer, I saw someone taking a picture. Bid'ah, bid'ah, this is innovation, no pictures here. I told him, wait a minute, why is this bid'ah? At the time of the Prophet, there was no taking pictures. I told him, you see that security camera on the gate? That's bid'ah too. Go take that down and then come after these people. He got angry. Because the whole place is filled with security cameras. I told him that didn't exist at the Prophet's time. Why are you so upset? I told him the loudspeakers, the mu'adhin, that's bid'ah too. Go take that down. Some shallow-minded Muslims have this, perception of an innovation. Yes.
Wouldn't other schools of thought consider the morning of Abba Abdullah
Exactly, that's another example. Another example, the Quran says show love for the Ahlul Bayt. Express that love, not just have that love in your heart. Show it.
I'm sorry.
قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. The mawadda in Arabic doesn't mean just love in your heart. It's love that's confirmed by actions. It means the express of the love.
What surah is that?
Show that. Show that mawadda and show that love for the Ahlul Bayt. That's mawadda. The Quran commands us. Okay. Now, let's say when it comes to Ashura, if you wear black. Why do you wear black? Because in a lot of cultures, it's a sign of mourning and sadness. That becomes mustahab. Why does it become mustahab? Because the Prophet said wearing black on Imam Hussein is mustahab? No, the Prophet never said that. The Prophet, he himself, he expressed grief for Imam Hussein. He himself, he cried. And he himself, he commanded his ummah to stand with his Ahlul Bayt and to show them love, to express that love. How you express that love depends on the era that you live in, on the culture that you live in. As long as it's within the framework of Islam, it's not something that's haram, it becomes mustahab. Wearing black in Islamic law is makruh. Did you know that? Wearing black in Islamic law is makruh. It's unrecommended. Not everything. There are exceptions, like the turban, the cloak, the shoes. These are exceptions. But like a shirt. Wearing a black shirt in Islamic law is makruh. Try not to wear it if you can. It's makruh. Especially praying in it is highly makruh.
Like a plain black shirt?
Yeah, plain black shirt.
Why is that?
It's makruh.
But what's the basis on it?
It could have negative psychological impact. It's a dark color. Hadith say it's the color of the garment of hell.
The Jewish used to wear it.
Even for women?
Yes, some other cultures would wear it and Islam wanted to make a distinction, right?
Even for women?
Not the abaya. I said the abaya is an exception. The clothes that you wear. Let's say at home you're wearing a shirt, right? That shirt, right? Or dress that you're wearing should not be black. It's makruh. It's not haram. Don't worry about it. It's just makruh. Now, something that's makruh, how does it become mustahab? It can become mustahab. If you're wearing that for a few days to show your sadness for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, this now becomes sha'air-Allah, one of the symbols that remind you of God and the representative of God. It becomes mustahab. That becomes mustahab.
But black is fashion, Sayyidina?
Yes, black is fashion today. You find people at weddings with a black suit. But in Islamic law, it's makruh. Try not to wear black. Don't wear a black suit. Or a shirt, at least.
What about pink, Sayyidina?
In fact, light colors are recommended in Islam. The lighter colors are recommended in Islam. So don't freak out. You know, there are exceptions. What covers the head? For the men, it could be the turban, for instance. For the sisters, the scarf. That's an exception. The cloak, if you wear the abaya, the cloak, that's an exception. It can be black. However, the garment that you wear, like the inside garment, if you're wearing it for Imam Hussein, for Imam Zain al-Abidin, for a good cause, it's mustahab. But on an average day, don't wear black. It's makruh. Especially if you're in prayer. It reduces the reward of the salah. Yes, it's because it's makruh.
What if you done other before?
It's okay. I mean, it's not haram, so there was no harm, inshallah. But going forward, just keep that in mind. Yes?
So going back to that Quranic verse of that tells you to show love for about love for Ahlul Bayt, what would the surah be?
Shura.
Surah Ash-Shura,
Ayat 23.
verse 23. Not Shu'ara, Surah Ash-Shura, the chapter of the consultation, verse 23. قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَةِ.
Thank you, Sayyid.
So we find that Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam is saying, there were innovations after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Imam in another sermon, he highlights those innovations. For instance, Imam Ali alayhi salam says in wudu, the Prophet would wipe his feet. After him comes a group that is washing their feet. That's an innovation in the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another thing that the Imam highlights is the maqam of Ibrahim at the Hajj, how they changed the position of maqam Ibrahim. Another is date wine. What do we call date wine in Arabic? Khamr is grape wine. Wine that's made from grapes. Khamr. If you hear khamr in Arabic, linguistically it originally means not just any wine, it means specifically grape wine. We have what is called date wine, which was common in Mecca. It was common in Medina. It's called what in Arabic?
Is it kharoof?
No. Have you heard of nabidh? Nabidh. Nabidh is basically a type of wine that was prevalent in Medina. See, in Medina, the water from the wells of Medina had, I think, a bitter taste to it, or maybe a salty taste. So in order to make the water taste better, they would put some dates in it. It was very common. Assalamu alaikum. To sweeten the water. Now sometimes they would allow the dates to ferment in the water and it would become a type of wine. The Prophet banned it. Clearly he banned it in Sahih hadiths that this is wine, this is unacceptable, it's haram. Those who came after the Prophet, they said no, it's halal. It's only the grape wine that's haram. The date wine, it's fine. And in fact there are historical references that the second caliph would drink it. And there are even sahih references that no one can dispute, that when he was struck by Abu Lu'lu', when he was stabbed, the first thing he requested was what? Nabidh. Date wine. Now the question is, now this is how they justify it, the followers of other schools of thought. They say, well, he was in pain, and this type of wine sometimes acts as a painkiller, so he needed it for an urgent reason. The guy's bleeding and he's suffering, so he needs it. The question is, you are the Khalifa of the Muslimin in Medina. Where did you get date wine from so fast? Where was it? Think about it. He's like, bring me date wine. From who? From which market? Muslim market, there should be no wine in it. In the house of the Khalifa, there should be no wine. Where did they bring it to him so fast? That's an indication to the followers of the other schools of thought, is that it was something that may have been regularly consumed by him. So Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib says this is an innovation. Something that was haram, they declared halal. Another thing is the basmala that the Imam mentions. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, the Prophet would observe this loudly. They changed that. They made it silent. Another thing that he mentions is the Taraweeh prayers. Another that he mentions is the mut'ah, the temporary marriage, which Umar declared unlawful and he made haram after it was halal during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So the Imam says the source of all this innovation is desires that were followed by people and innovations that were made. Any questions on this hadith from Al-Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam?
So if it's wine and water, why is it not halal? How does it make you intoxicated? Why is it?
Because when the date ferments, alcohol is produced. Yes, it's alcoholic, of course.
In grapes too?
Well, the wine that they make, the common wine, is from grapes. They let the grapes ferment and that becomes wine. Yeah, historically the alcohol that people would drink was from wine, from grapes. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a grape wine. There's a special grape wine.
Most types of wine, like the red wine, is from grapes. Most types of wine. But it could be done from any fruit. If it ferments, it goes through the fermentation process, it produces alcohol, and it becomes naturally intoxicating, especially with larger amounts of consumption. It becomes haram.
So they don't put alcohol in it, it just becomes like that?
It produces alcohol, yes. The fermentation process produces alcohol.
Even apple does it.
Yeah, with apple, with any fruit. The most common one and the most popular one is from grapes. Yeah. But in Medina, the date one became popular after the Prophet ﷺ. Even until today, there are some Sunni schools of thought, they will tell you the nabidh is halal. It's problematic.
I heard some scholar in Morocco.
He declared it halal? Yeah, they do declare it halal. Now some of them say, yeah, if it's in large quantities where you're getting drunk, okay, don't get drunk. Don't let it reach that point. But if you have a small shot of it, it's okay. No, this is the official fatwa. This is the official fatwa of some schools of thought. The date wine is fine, it's okay.
What about the cup that the is that halal?
That it may fall under the category of drugs. I don't know. We have to further see exactly what it is. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآله الطاهرين.